And welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast presented by BetMGM. I am your host, Matthew Cox, and the rest of the three-man weave crew, Kai McKeon, Jim Root are both joining me here. The rest, including just those two. There's no more that are part of this group. Today, we're talking about all things college basketball, coming to you every Wednesday morning, dropping a new Big Bets on Campus episode. Going to discuss the key games of the week upcoming, a deceptively nice set of games, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday before we hit the Christmas lull, and then a quick reset into full-blown conference play, which will have plenty of games to talk about, drowning in content for sure. The format of today's show is as usual: power, mid-major breakdowns, the trash fan pick of the week, spotlight on teaser. Stay tuned, you'll find out. But first, we talk about the live dog of the week, our favorite section, I think, trying to pick out the live money line underdog pick or picks of the next 3 days. We get a pretty good batch last week, gentlemen, but I think our best pick by far was in no way a genius pick. It just involves fading Louisville, and Arkansas State completely embarrassed that team. Props to both of you. I think I stayed away foolishly from that one, but yeah, turns out betting Louisville in anything is betting against Louisville in anything is a good idea. So we'll try and target them on more live money dog. I just don't know if we're going to have opportunities to, because they're so bad at this point. A lot of games I teed up for us to discuss today: Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I'll just quickly run through them here, gents. Let me know what jumps out to you here. UC Irvine going to New Mexico, SLU going to NC State on Wednesday. Thursday, we have UT Arlington at Texas Tech, Kent State at Oregon. A couple of solid mid-majors against, I think, brittle power conference teams. Maybe a little bit mean to Texas Tech, but it's kind of where I see them right now. And then Friday, Yale going to Kansas. Probably a reach of an inclusion, but I think Kansas has been vulnerable at home, I think we can say. And then Cornell at Robert Morris is an interesting angle I have. I'll pause there. Kai, any of these jump out to you, or others that I did not include in an oversight?
Gosh, of your list, Matt, I just don't know. I don't want to fade New Mexico at home, even though Irvine's been incredible and they have Bant Lichten back in the lineup. Certainly a lot healthier. They've been amazing this season, but New Mexico's so tough at home. SLU, I don't really want to bet on SLU. I've been trying to fade SLU, in fact, and they've gotten a few miraculous covers, unfortunately, the last couple of games. So maybe I just stay away from them entirely. Texas Tech Arlington is intriguing, Matt. Philip Russell back in lineup for Arlington. Certainly Texas Tech, not a team, at least this season, that seems like a team that blows out mid majors, right? We've seen that in the past with them, but I'm not sure that's their identity this year. And then Oregon, I'm kind of tired of fading at home. I've done it a few times. Somehow they've been covering despite having a depleted roster. So probably staying away from that one as well. I agree with a couple Jim added later in this section, but I'll holster that for now, Jim.
Yeah, we'll focus on Matt's crew here because there are one or two that I like here. I'm with you on Kent State, Matt. Oregon, you mentioned the battered front line. Their backcourt's a little banged up too. Keyshawn Bartholomew missed last game. They got absolutely destroyed by Syracuse, a really, really young Syracuse team in Sioux Falls. They played a weird neutral site game halfway across the country for each team. I think Kent State can absolutely compete there. I'm taking the risk. I'm taking Kent State going into the woods. That gross court. Actually, I kind of like that court, but I'm going to jump on Kent State with you, Matt. I sort of thought about SLU NC State. There's the, call back to the 2014 tournament when SLU played the foul game for the final 3 minutes of the game. It was insane. And they erased like a 15-point deficit with a bunch of like free throws and steals and stuff. But I'm not quite going to go there, Matt. The one I'm definitely joining you on is Kent State. And then, like Kai mentioned, I've got a couple more to add, but I want to hear you back up your favorites of this group you said.
Yeah, and for the record, the Wednesday two for I gave out UC Irvine, New Mexico, SLU at NC State. I don't like either of those. I just think you could make intriguing cases for those. SLU gets a little healthier now, and getting 12 against an NC State team that can certainly play down to competition felt intriguing to me. But I will take both of the Thursday ones. I'm with Jimbo on Kent State. They've been off for a bajillion years. They already made like a quasi West Coast trip to South Dakota and won. So it's not like they're,
Boy,
this
that
is
is
not like
real
a
quasi West Coast.
They've
Not even
proven they
close
can
to
go.
Oregon.
They've proven they can go west on a pretty significant travel situation and win in sort of a non-conference game. I think they can absolutely do that against Oregon again, which is down a lot of their key horses. In UTA, I think they go into Texas Tech and win too. Grant McCastle, great coach. Texas Tech without Devin Cambridge, I think they've lost a pretty key firepower, a potent point of their offense. And I've seen them twice now against San Jose State. Now they ended up pulling away in that game. And then most recently against Oral Roberts, a team I think UTA is now better than objectively. Barely escaped them at home too. And they just play slow. And I think they're prone to high variance situations where UTA with Philip Russell at the helm can pull it off. So that's all I got with the moneyline dogs. I'm only sticking with 2. I am not touching Yale, Kansas, nor am I touching Cornell at Robert Morris. Although I thought Bobby Moe catching a touchdown at home was a little bit intriguing now that they're healthier. But Jim, what were the other ones you threw into the mix, into the hot button?
Well, I just want for Arlington, as you mentioning Russell, in his first game as eligible as a 2-time transfer, he had 28 points started, was the MVP of the game per Ken Palm. So he is a massive, massive piece. Definitely upgrades that Arlington team. So I sort of buy that. Matt, what I'm going to go with, I'm going to stick with the team that treated us well last week. That's Arkansas State. I know they're not playing Louisville this week, but you got a pretty high variance, a lot of up and down type stuff against Belmont on the road. I just like this Arkansas State team. They're a little healthier than they were to start the year. They also had a major stylistic shift with their coaching change this offseason, and I feel like they're starting to figure it out a little bit. So I'm going to go with Arkansas State +5 at Belmont on Wednesday. I'm sort of intrigued by Wyoming on Wednesday too. A weird neutral site game against South Dakota State down in El Paso, and they might get Mason Walters healthy. Their star. Is he NAIA or D3? I can't remember what his.
I believe he was NAIA Player of the Year.
Okay.
Or at least 2-time first team All-American. He averaged like 30 a game.
Yeah, and he's going to give them some real punch, but it would be his first game off an injury at this level, so I'm not quite going to jump in there. But then Idaho +8 at Riverside on Thursday, and Mizzou +10 versus Illinois on Friday. Bragging rights game. Idaho, I'll quick just say that they compete very well against teams of their caliber. They cannot play power conference competition. They will get absolutely drilled. But against a team like Riverside, who just had a heartbreaking rivalry crosstown loss to Cal Baptist, I think Idaho can go and compete there. And then Kai rivalry, speaking of which, our alma mater, the Missouri Tigers, have won 4 of the last 5 versus Illinois, including some years where Mizzou was bad.
Yeah.
And really does compete there now. The gap between the two is probably as large as it's been in recent memory because Illinois is legit. But I think they can compete, keep that game as a kind of a coin flip for most of the way.
Yeah, I hope we get 10. Boy, I'd be on the Tigers as a dog, but I think they can win that game. Why not? You kind of throw away, like you said, the performance of each team in that type of game, right? A big rivalry setting. I really like Idaho too. I don't see Riverside blowing anybody out. Just the style they play, their offense is terrible. I think Idaho, who can actually shoot sometimes, can definitely hang with Riverside there and maybe beat them on the road. So I like Mizzou and Idaho.
Yeah, I like Idaho. I'm just still a little bit distraught, scarred over my biggest bet of the year was against Seattle and they lost by 40. So I'm still trying to come back from that emotionally. I think practically Jim has the right angle with that one. I don't have the data in front of me on the Mizzou bragging rights angle. It seems like over the last decade plus, the ebbs and flows of the team that's down year to year tends to rise up and play well in that game. So I also like that angle too.
Except that one year we were terrible and lost by like 30.
Really bad.
Lost to Kansas year by 30.
Yeah.
Kwanzaa year too.
That was a Kwanzaa year. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, 2021, Illinois won 88-63. Easily covered a 14.5 point spread.
Yes, they did.
I think this one's more competitive.
Hey, I hope you're right. I don't quite have the same confidence after the Seton Hall game, but we will see. Again, I have UTA and Kent State. That is it. That's all I need. So, Jim.
Okay, I've got Arkansas State, Kent State. Those are the Wednesday ones. And Idaho Thursday, Mizzou Friday. Kai just joined with a couple.
Yep, Mizzou and Idaho. That's what I got, Matthew.
Moving right along to Blowout City. We called out 2 potential blowout spots last week. Basically just picking off 2 good teams that have the DNA to be massive, awesome favorites, which we will talk about later in today's show. Auburn and FAU, and they both mauled their respective opponents. So as we know, both teams are probably in the top 10 territory and had no signs of slowing down. Kind of a theme with the 2 we picked out this week, and it's the state of Iowa. That's right, Kai. We love Iowa. We love Iowa teams as large favorites. Both have been awesome this year as large favorites, Iowa and Iowa State especially. And they both get some pretty juicy matchups, I'd say, to beat the doors off to low major teams. UMBC goes into Carver Hawkeye Arena on Wednesday. KenPom has that Iowa laying 25. We know Iowa is not good against good teams, but they are very good against bad teams, whatever that means. However, there are rare exceptions to that, such as last year when they lost at home to Eastern Illinois, who fittingly is playing at Iowa State on Thursday, but Iowa State has not shown any such immunity or vulnerability against low caliber competition. While we did see IU go into Fog Allen Gym this year and give KU a scare, I think Iowa State wins by roughly 40-45.
Yeah, I love Iowa, first of all, in that one. They just constantly smash bad teams at home, and UMBC is one of the fastest teams in the country. You don't want to get in a track meet with Iowa. Like, that's just a bad idea to do at Carver Hawkeye. KenPom has 103-78. That's the 25-point spread is Iowa in triple digits in the projection.
It should be biggest total of the year, I think. I don't think we've
I would
seen 180
imagine.
yet. 180 is going to be big.
Arizona, Alabama, Matthew, a game we'll discuss later.
Good.
May actually have a total right up in that vicinity as well. But yeah, that one's way up there. That's so many possessions for Iowa's talent gap to play out. I like that one. And then, yeah, Iowa State, man, they have all they've done is drill bad competition to the point that people are getting mad about how high they're in the net. Jeff Goodman tweeting about that today on Tuesday about how they're sixth and they haven't beaten anyone besides Iowa. It's their only good win. They just keep blowing teams out, and it feels like they've got the goods to do that again. They're kind of just that atmosphere plus their defensive intensity, and they actually seem to make shots at home. It's boded well for Iowa State.
Yeah, the possession count worries me a little bit in that one. Eastern Illinois and Marty Simmons, Eastern Illinois' coach, he's a bit more crafty than your average low major coach. Matt mentioned they hung at Fog Allen, and really Illinois was probably lucky to cover against them in game one. Illinois barely covered against Eastern Illinois to open the season, but Iowa State's also proven they can blow teams out in low possession games, right? They beat Green Bay by 40 and 64 possessions. Grambling State was like 45 and under 70. So it can be done. I don't think UMBC is that bad, but if you're going to play an 80 possession game with Iowa, which is what it's projected, and I don't see how it won't be an 80 possession game, I don't think they're going to be able to compete. So I do like the Iowa game a bit better, even if it is 25.
Matt, what do you think about what do you think about Gonzaga on Wednesday night? Coming off a loss to UConn, playing a SWAC team was just in Vegas
Jackson
for a
State.
doubleheader. Now they come up to Spokane. The SWAC teams feel like they've kind of had their wits end with these bye games. It seems like a good spot for Gonzaga in a more up-tempo game than that Mississippi Valley State one.
I agree. I just think Jackson State's kind of good, and like the exception to that rule I was spewing out did beat your Tigers at home. And from what it sounded like, the Gonzaga dudes, I know Mississippi Valley State's way worse than Jackson State, but it feels like they really just don't want to exert any sort of like mega will against these bad teams. Like they were vehemently walking the ball off the floor in Mississippi Valley State on purpose to like try and not beat them by too many. I can see them definitely keep their foot off the gas here. So I worry about some sleepwalkiness, even though it does profile as a good spot. Mo Williams, I trust. That's it. The fighting Mo's. Let's talk real games with big boys on both sides. But before we get to the power games, plural, of the week, a shout to our sponsor. BBOC is presented by BetMGM. Use bonus code ACTION when signing up to get up to $1,500 paid back in bonus bets if your first bet loses. For new users in Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, and Wyoming. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. A lot of good games coming up this week/weekend. Heavily tilted toward Wednesday. Got some of these quasi home game neutral sites we talked about last week, but we lead off with a pure neutral site: Baylor versus Duke at the Garden, the Mecca, Madison Square Garden. That is, Kai. Should be a high scoring game. Is that purely neutral
when Duke's playing there, Matt? You tell me.
We do like to call that one of Duke's quasi home courts, Kai. So it might be a slight tilt toward the Duke faithful there, but yeah, no one lives anywhere near where New York is located. So I'll call it a pure neutral for the sake of this discussion. Defensive issues had plagued Baylor recently, Kai. I think it was a team that we were sort of buying as an elite team, but they've been gashed in some of their big matchups this year. Duke's sort of been off the radar quietly the last couple of weeks. Like they played those big games in November. We haven't really seen them in the spotlight. This is kind of their return. to prove that they might be an elite contender that we thought they were. Tyrese Proctor aside, what's your angle in this matchup?
Not sure I really have one. I see Baylor off a loss with Scott Drew, who I think is a fantastic coach, and I kind of lean their way. I know they've kind of gotten, like you said, gashed against good competition, but they can also outscore anybody, right? They outscored Auburn, they outscored Florida. That's pretty darn good. Now, Duke's been really good without Proctor, albeit they've played Charlotte and Hofstra. Not the best competition, but not schlubs either at the mid-major level. My gut is sort of leaning towards Baylor here. I don't really have anything strong, Jim. I might sit it out. We'll see what the line is.
Yeah, with no Proctor, that's a real concern with perimeter defense. Like that is his biggest strength. I think everybody was excited about him blossoming offensively and being an All-American, but really that hasn't happened. It's been more the defensive end where I think he's going to be missed against top shelf competition. He went out really early in that Georgia Tech game, like a minute in, and I think that really affected Duke there. Now they've had chances to prepare for him to not be there, and maybe he returns, although they've said they're going to be super duper cautious with him. But I think Baylor got their real bad, tough regression game out of the way against Michigan State, where they got absolutely spanked in both shooting splits and in the paint. I think they figured out more against Duke without that key perimeter defender. Actually, do lean Baylor here, Matthew. I don't think Duke has figured things out to this point.
I agree. I'm fading Duke here. I love the spot for Baylor. Just got absolutely embarrassed by Michigan State. And so now you catch Duke, who is off the finals week lull, which we've seen has been a bugaboo for some teams. Now, I remember this vividly last year. Duke off their finals lull laid an egg at Wake Forest. I kind of see a similar kind of a sluggish start, especially after you feel a little bit fat and happy with two big wins in your back pocket the last two out. I would lean toward the Bears despite their defensive concerns, which I don't think have gone away, but in this matchup, they won't quite bite them. So
and Duke shot 21 for 40 in those two home games without Proctor that I think has artificially made it look like, oh, they're fine without Proctor. It's like, unless you're shooting 50% every game, then maybe it wouldn't look as good.
Yeah, Mark Mitchell's going to have to show up for this game. He certainly has been MIA in some of their big ones. Oklahoma, Kai, against North Carolina. We got two more games on Wednesday at these quasi homes. This one is at Charlotte at the Spectrum Center. I believe UNC played here last year against Michigan. But yeah, so, partial home edge just with a pretty easy travel for the Tar Heels. But Oklahoma has not lost a basketball game this year. They are undefeated. Porter Moser, top 20 in KenPom. They're going to be probably around a pick 'em to the Sooners, I would say. Probably could argue they should be favored, but I think you kind of have to respect UNC's been, good and they're close to home. Coaching mismatch question mark? I'll leave it at that to you. Go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah, it's an enormous coaching mismatch. Porter Moser versus Hubert Davis. Oklahoma's defense has been incredible, and they've played good competition. They've beaten good competition. Iowa, USC, Arkansas. Now, this is, quote unquote, the most away game they've had in quotation marks. I'm not sure I'm super worried about that necessarily. It's not at UNC's actual building. It is, like you mentioned, in Charlotte, not a true road game. In fact, I might move the line towards UNC at the opener, which I kind of like because I like Oklahoma here. It's a coaching mismatch for me. Like you said, it's a team that can compete defensively and on the glass. They're not going to get bullied by North Carolina inside. Give me the Sooners.
I'm betting Carolina despite the coaching mismatch. Definitely nervous about that. But I don't think Oklahoma has played good competition. I think Iowa, USC, Arkansas, you could say are three of the more disappointing teams in the entire country. Maybe that's unfair to Iowa.
Arkansas too? Yeah,
Providence?
I agree.
No, I'm saying Arkansas definitely is one of the most. Providence is solid, but none of these teams are top 40 right now in KenPom. Carolina is by far the best team they played. It's going to be a hostile crowd. And no one's made threes against Oklahoma, 25.6%. I think that's a little bit aberrational versus like a true, oh my God, they're so swarming defensively. They do have some good length, but I think Carolina can find open shots here. Matt, I don't feel great about it, but Carolina off two losses. I don't think they're as bad as they've looked in some of those. And Oklahoma value about as high in the market as you're going to find. I'll take Carolina about a pick in a home friendly crowd, even though it's a neutral.
Right. If it were a true home, it would feel a lot like the BYU versus Utah spot. I think we talked about last week where it's like you cannot possibly have a higher market value than BYU at that time. Oklahoma, the same case. And UNC, well, I'm with, the coaching mismatch, frightens me to be blunt. I do think,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
They played UConn, lost by 11. I mean, UConn beats everybody. So that's like, I don't put any shame on that. And then Kentucky, they've clearly risen against good teams and they lost by 4. So this is kind of okay, Hubert, this is your final chance to prove it that you can get a big win against a pretty legit team. They beat Tennessee at home pretty handily. So I think maybe get an effort of that quality. Some shots got to be going down though for the Tar Heels. That's kind of the thing. They sometimes live and die by the 3 ball as much, despite having Armando Bacot inside. Give him the damn ball. I digress.
Just one last point. I think, and this is bared out this season in terms of percentage. Oklahoma usually and Porter Moser, the best transition defense like possible,
yes.
like in the country, and that's going to be a huge factor, I think, too. They're not going to get beaten transition, which is where UNC feasts, and
I agree.
They played a perfect game against Tennessee.
Yeah,
and won that game for sure. Yeah,
it's got to be a Bacot game. It's a Bacot game. All right, we're going across the country here. Another quasi home. Alabama and Arizona, 2 teams who we both saw, I would say, battle admirably, but fall short against Purdue. Arizona most recently there in Indianapolis, Alabama up in Canada, our friendly neighbor to the north. Now it's Arizona's turn to get the quasi home edge, Kai, here in Phoenix at the Footprint Center. KenPom has it -7 against Alabama, who, they've been good in these big games. They played a ton of them. It does feel like maybe this is one where they kind of rise and catch Arizona, maybe not at their A game, but I kind of think the spot's better for Arizona, honestly, coming off that loss to Purdue. And it's really the only time they've looked vulnerable all year. So I like Arizona. Nothing real complicated here to my handicap.
Yeah, I guess you can say they looked vulnerable, but Purdue played the best game they've played all year, and Arizona still was in the game at the end of it. I mean, I think that's pretty impressive when you can take the best team in the country, arguably their best shot, and you're still in it, right? FAU did that against Illinois, for instance. 7 points is a lot, but this game is going to be 80 possessions. KenPom, Jim mentioned the total of the other game. 183 points is the projected total here for KenPom. I kind of buy that's going to go over. I think it's going to be an up and down game, a really fun NBA style game to watch. We know Arizona can score too, and man, they can defend. I think they can at least stop Alabama enough and score definitely a lot to keep Alabama at bay and get the over and lean towards them on the spread as well.
Yeah, that's the difference, Kai. I think the fact that the Arizona defense can actually hold up. It's a #1 defensive rebounding team in the country by rate. And that's how Alabama really stayed in it at Creighton. They had 17 offensive boards against the Blue Jays. I don't think they're going to find that kind of success here. Now, they might get better looks from 3 than they did at Creighton, where Creighton really takes that away, and Alabama was 4 for 22 from deep. But this one, like, just looking at it, it was like, oh, 7, wow. But the more I think about it, with the way Kai mentioned, with the pace, how there's going to be possessions for it to get up over 7. I'm going with Arizona here, Matt, with that semi-home court and off the loss. And Bama's kind of in this grueling non-conference schedule that Nate Oates drew up for him.
I think they overscheduled. I'm curious if Oates would agree with that, but I mean, Ohio State, Oregon, Clemson, Arkansas State, Purdue, Creighton are their most recent games. They've not gotten a big marquee win. So I think this is kind of, they go all in for this one, but man, if they have enough to beat Arizona, probably not.
Haven't they gone all in 2 straight games?
And they haven't gotten there. Yeah, this is probably their, God, I don't know, Purdue to neutral, Creighton at Creighton. I mean, yeah, again, Nate Oates, don't schedule like this next year. I guess I lean to Zona.
Please do. I like that you did. It's fun to watch the games.
Thursday, Kentucky at Louisville. This is even worth discussing.
How dare you?
I'm just
Power game of the week.
It's a pretty big rivalry. Like some would say the biggest in college basketball until Kenny Payne walked there. Not to throw shade on Kenny Payne, Kai. KenPom has this as a 2-touchdown favorite. Kentucky laying 2 touchdowns at the Yum Center. A sliver of me wants to buy into like a rally around the Gipper. Big effort here at home for Louisville. We saw them play Texas close. I don't know if we really are impressed by that in hindsight, but we have seen Louisville somewhat rise in bigger games. Do they catch a younger, I don't know, maybe not focused Kentucky team? I'm reaching for grasping for straws here. Is this Kentucky smash? I think so, probably, right?
Yeah, I mean, that is double digits at home in a huge rivalry like this, and it's not Louisville laying points, which is what we like to fade Louisville with. Yeah, I'm a little bit scared, but I also think Kentucky is just monumentally better. I don't think they're going to sleepwalk either. This is a massive rivalry, like you said. Like Kentucky wants to plow Louisville and smoke them. I'm not sure if I'm going to bet the Cats. They beat them by 23 last year for just reference a little bit. Obviously that was at Rupp, but I don't know, Jim. I'm pretty torn. 13 is probably just going to be too tough for me to take a side.
Yeah, I think Louisville
what the
covered
spread-
that game, right?
I
They
was gonna
covered,
say,
didn't
what the spread was last year? It was 23.5. So Louisville snuck inside the number.
Wow.
That's how garbage they were.
they?
Jeez.
That's my one concern, Matt, is I know it's a huge rivalry, but Kentucky, these young freshmen, really, really young team, it feels like when they see a team across from them, they're just like, boy, they're bad. We don't need our A game. They're not able to bring it. Now, this should be a hype atmosphere, which should fuel Kentucky a little more than like sleepy home spot versus Wilmington or whatever. But I kind of do weirdly lean Louisville because of that focus thing, but I'm certainly not gonna put any stock in betting the Cardinals against a team that's way better than them. So I will
First
sit
true
this one
roadie
out.
for Kentucky.
Yeah, not bad. That's a
Yeah.
solid point for a mega young team.
No, you're right. I mean, St. Joe's, and we learned that St. Joe's is just a really good team, I think, but still, and in the UNC Wilmington game and even the Penn game, they were very competitive with Penn until they needed a late rally to pull away there. So yeah, they have played down to competition.
Kentucky got down 21-8 to Texas A&M Commerce at home. Like they have had horrible efforts when the other team isn't like a big power conference team.
So we'll see how much they respect Louisville. I think it's basically Kentucky determines whether Kentucky covers. And I don't think Louisville really has much of a say in the outcome, to put it nicely. Let's move to Friday real quick. I'll be honest, this game doesn't really excite me at all, but the preseason it probably would have. UCLA hosting Maryland. Two teams that are going to be in the same conference going forward. I can't even fathom that's a real thing, but that's where we are in college basketball realignment now. Kai, the Bruins hosting the Terps. Which team has looked worse so far? Is kind of the battle of the sinking ships is kind of how I see this game.
That's a good question. They both look really bad, like really bad. I can't even decide who's looked worse. Both are not great offensively this season, but both have played good defensively. Turgeon, Cronin, not Turgeon anymore. Maryland, excuse me, Willard and Cronin. Sort of similar minded coaches, right? Defense, like a gritty style is what I kind of think of when I think of Willard and Cronin. I don't know. It's horrible travel from Maryland. Obviously, that's definitely a factor. I think Maryland's a better team, and they're going to be about a 4-point dog here. It seems like a wash in my head, Jim. I really can't decide yet on this one.
I'll probably bet the under. I just don't really see how either team scores against the other one. Pace is a little more of a question mark, but it does feel like both coaches are going to be like, we got to prove we can out tough these guys. And it devolves into just a physical rock fight. Mini reminder, UCLA was the only team that won at Maryland all last year, and they won by 27. Just completely embarrassed Maryland on the road going across the country. Maybe there's some revenge on the Maryland minds. Jameer Young, Julian Reese, Dante Scott, remembering that. And this is a pretty brand new UCLA team. So, Matt, I think I do lean Maryland on the side, but the travel scares me a little bit. And I have no idea how they score from the perimeter against this UCLA team. So that's mostly a sit out, probably bet some on the under, though.
This did make the consideration shortlist for the trash pan pick of the week because I do think it's a really gross game. But I feel like out of respect for the trash pan pick of the week, it should be two lesser caliber teams. Although the way UCLA and Maryland are trending, they could argue they could end up in this section at some point. That concludes the Power Conference spotlights. Let's the mid-major game of the week. Pretty lackluster slate in terms of mid-major showdowns, except for one stellar shining game on Thursday. I don't want to hear your quibbles about what we qualify as mid-majors here. St. Joe's going to Charleston is going to be an absolute doozy of a game. The city will be rocking. Pat Kelsey and his burgeoning squad this year lost a lot, but they've been playing really well as of late, despite a stupid non-cover last night. But St. Joe's has been nothing short of spectacular in games when they need to be. Outside of that home loss to Commerce, not a lot they've done wrong this season. 9-2 are the Fighting Hawks, Kai. Billy Lang going down to Charleston. Feels like a bracket buster type game, and it's a crucial one for at-large implications. And this roster and this resume is certainly starting to stack up as at-large caliber. What's your angle in this breakdown?
There's going to be combined like 73 point attempts in this game, and that's not hyperbole. Both teams average over 30 attempts per game. Now, St. Joe just shot it a lot better than Charleston, but I still believe Charleston has good shooters on this team. I've been super impressed by St. Joe's. Their backcourt is truly like awesome. They kind of have an at-large resume right now, especially if they would have gotten rid of that Commerce loss. That's horrible. But if you win one on the road against Charleston, it's another feather in your cap. That's probably a Q2 win when all is said and done. And certainly you want to stack those up. My one concern about this game, if you're going to back St. Joe's, is that shooting regression, right? St. Joe's defense, they allow a ton of 3-pointers. They're bottom 5 in the country in 3-point attempt rate defense. And like I said, Charleston will shoot about 40 3-pointers in this game. And if that regression comes back to sort of go towards the mean, then Charleston is probably going to win this game, Jim.
Yeah, the variance is scary because people talk about Villanova, how they take a ton of threes and give up a ton. So their games are really wild swings. St. Joe's is that same way, except they've made 37%. Their opponents have made 29%. So it hasn't been swinging that much. Now, part of that, Matt, is because it's just eye testing. Like they can switch 1 through 5 almost. Rosier Fleming can guard guards. That's why they're forcing teams to play a lot of ISO ball. There's the really low defensive assist rate. And I think some of these threes are really tough over the top against a longer defender late in the shot clock. And they've got a long possession length defensively that shows that. So I've actually been really, really impressed with St. Joe's. I think their backcourt athleticism plus Fleming is a little too much for Charleston to handle here. I can't believe I'm doing it, but I'm continuing to trust Billy Lang. Team's just good. That's all there's to it.
I think they have a high assist rate, Jim, allowed.
Oh, okay. Sorry. So yeah,
like bottom 5
teams on the perimeter
or bottom 100, whatever. Yeah.
They're going to to me, this is as simple as it's a talent versus system angle, right? I think one team has the better Jimmys and Joes and the other team, like if you really break down the Charleston roster, it's a lot of low mid-major / Division II guys. And I'd say even a more watered down version of what we saw last season. It's just a really, really good coach and a really, really good approach, not to rhyme in a cheesy way there.
Nice bar.
Thank you. Pretty good. I'll just stay away from me. I kind of think Charleston wins this game, but I think I'm with Jim. Gut wise, just tougher to go against the talent and the way they're playing together, which is sort of what they've been missing the last few years. Unfortunately, we now pivot to the trash can pick of the week. We discussed against our will Cal State Bakersfield against Fresno last week, and I believe that finished at 120. A big win for Fresno at home, squeaking by the Runners in a battle at the Valley out there in California. We head to the Midwest this week for Notre Dame hosting Marist. Funny to think that you'd ever hear Notre Dame in the trash can pick of the week section, but that's where we are right now. Under the Micah Shrewsbury regime, they are playing slow. They're playing ugly because they have to. And obviously with Marist coming to town, coached by John Dunn, defense and slow pace of play are usually going hand in hand. Any angles on this game, gentlemen? I think the under should be low 120s. And Marist will be a shockingly short dog, but maybe not so shocking given how good they've been this season, Kyle.
Yeah, they've been really good this season, compared to expectations. But who have they played? They have one of the worst schedules in the country this year, and that's like 356 in their non-con schedule. They have not played anybody in the top 200 this season because Iona recently dropped out. 4-point spread against Micah Shrewsbury, and I know Notre Dame is not the normal Notre Dame this year, but my gosh, that's short. I think Marist gives them some problems with their defense. Dunn is a mastermind on that end, but this is their first real game, I think, against good competition, and I would be scared to take them as a 4-point dog.
Yeah, it's too short. I will probably end up betting Notre Dame on that just based on the line. Marist performance against bad competition. I don't know how that translates. Like, look, this Notre Dame roster isn't ACC caliber really right now, but it's still categorically better than everybody Marist has been playing. And there's the 3-point shooting regression angle again here. Notre Dame's taking a ton of threes, but only shooting 27%, whereas Marist is allowing kind of a lot and only allowing 27%. One could say, oh, that means they're destined to shoot 27%. That's not how I see it. That's not how I believe in statistical regression, fellas. So I think Notre Dame knocks down some shots. And despite Marist being healthier, getting Brickner and Noah Harris back last game, I will likely land on the Irish here, Matthew, this last game right before Christmas.
Yeah, common opponent though, Matt. Common opponent here.
Go ahead. Transit property.
Maryland Eastern Shore. Marist beat him by 24, and Notre Dame beat him by 20. So maybe not so crazy.
Man, I was going to lay it with Notre Dame against Georgetown. That did not go well for those who did lay it with Notre Dame. So I'm going to learn my lesson from that and think that this team as a favorite is not really a great bet.
Oh, don't overreact. Look at the shooting splits in that game. Don't overreact to it.
You're probably right. Well, don't tell me that as I sit on my Georgetown ticket tonight. It's probably not a good omen. Kai, go ahead.
Georgetown's probably better than Marist also.
I know it's funny that we're wavering on that, but I would agree with that. I think I agree with the take. Speaking of favorites and dogs, who's better as what? Whenever you put on a certain mask, how do you perform? Surprising splits is our theme for this week's Spotlight section, always in alliterative fashion, as dubbed by me. Ferocious favorites and dynamite dogs, looking at what teams have performed best against the spread as a favorite with expectations versus as a dog. We'll start with the favorites first. Minnesota at 7-0 against the spread. I've been quietly following this as like Ben Johnson's team is actually kind of good when they are supposed to be better than their and I think it's just the fact that they're healthy this year and they actually have real talent.
Are they?
They're much more talented than they have been.
I'm saying, are they healthy? Dawson Garcia's been hurt. Braden Carrington's away from the team indefinitely.
They were healthier. Now I guess they're back to unhealthy. I would sure this plays forward. I'm not sure how this holds, but they have been healthier than they have in the last couple of years. 7-0 as a favorite. Pretty shocking. The other three, Richmond, 5-0, the Itsy Spiders. Kennesaw, the Owls at 5-0-1. And then we just talked about Marist, 5-0 as a favorite, as Kai mentioned, probably part of why they are inflated in their KenPom rankings. Any real teeth to any of these guys, or is this sort of set up for a potential fade opportunity of these four going into conference play coming around the corner?
The Minnesota 2-point percentage splits are really impressive. Like they are scoring very efficiently inside the arc, and they are preventing teams from doing the same. That's kind of the most sustainable thing you can find. And I know the competition hasn't been super elite.
That's it.
But I mean, even the Mizzou game, they got up 20 and just choked it away by not being able to handle pressure. Maybe Big Ten teams take advantage of that, but there aren't a lot of pressing teams in the Big Ten that can do the same thing that an SEC squad can do. So yeah, Kyle, I'll let you take that. Maybe the competition thing is what I should be more focused on, but it is a solid statistical split for the Gophers.
Yeah, absolutely. They're smoking the teams they should be smoking. That's Minnesota. Now, all four teams on this list are shocking to me, and the dogs too, except for maybe one or two dogs there. Every single team on this list is indeed surprising. I didn't think Richmond would be as good as they are this year. Kennesaw should have been a little bit down. Marist should not be a good favorite. Minnesota, yeah. I don't have a whole lot of reasoning. I think schedule's one of them, but man, Richmond's played a good schedule. And they've still come out on top, Matt.
Yeah, just looking at Minnesota, some of their results, even the Nebraska game kind of pops as pretty impressive. So we'll keep an eye on Ben Johnson. I know he's kind of the hot seat, hot name in the Big Ten this year. But hopefully, as Jim mentioned, they get some of those guys healthy, and hopefully it doesn't derail their Big Ten hopes. To Dynamite Dogs we go. The least surprising name on this list is Merrimack at 6-0-1, just the absolute poster child of a dog. Weird defense, can't score, muck up the game. They play it on their terms. And as such, they've not lost against a number when they've been catching points. Southern Utah at 6-1, the Fighting Rob Jeters. Of course, they have no talent. The market thought they'd be terrible, and Rob Jeters coached them, and guess what? They're pretty good. They also have a nice little big guy, Parsa Falah, who's a really nice player. Still, Rob Jeter is an excellent ball coach and should not be taken lightly. This next one surprised me. Coastal Carolina at 5-0. Now under the direction of their new interim coach. They've been kind of weirdly good as an underdog so far this year, although they've been getting some pretty big numbers. We'll see if that holds up going forward. And then Illinois, Chicago, Portland State, St. Thomas, all three of those also just kind of check the box of yeah, that makes sense in my mental model of, UIC, Luke Yaklich, not a good favorite, but certainly always can can exceed expectations as underdog. Portland State, just a ton of interchangeable, gritty, gutty types of athletes that can go to the glass and keep games competitively. And then St. Thomas, obviously under Johnny Towerkai, very feisty as a dog, actually playing some defense this year for a change too. Some, not a lot, some. I actually think all the dogs make more sense in my mind than the favorites. Thoughts?
Yeah, St. Thomas and Merrimack were the two that made sense to me. I expected both those teams to be scrappy dogs. Southern Utah came out of nowhere. They're way better than they should be. Credit to Rob Jeter. UIC had the potential in the preseason, but still has exceeded my expectations. They have real talent. The team that's smoking mirrors here is Coastal Carolina. Their results are just BS. They covered by a half against Wichita, 2 against Furman, 1 against Charleston the first time, and
Those were all at home, by the way, too. That was at their tournament.
They were down by 18 to Charleston last night before covering, and Winthrop, they covered by 2. They're barely covering these games as dogs. I don't think they're a good bet going forward.
No, I do not at all. I think they're getting a lot of teams that see the record and no, they're not that good. And especially like Coastal's very good in the last like 4 minutes of games. They don't roll over and die. They've gotten down double digits in like every single one of these games and just haven't completely gone away. And I think when the spreads get lower in conference, that they're going to be a little tougher to back there. But yeah, man, those slowdown teams with really strong defenses, UIC, St. Thomas, Merrimack, it makes a lot of sense. One thing with UIC, I'll slip in, is they're number 1 in 3-point percentage defense. I think they're going to face a little bit of that buzzword regression coming at some point this year. But so far, that defense has been mega, mega stout.
Fellas, that concludes today's episode of the Big Bets on Campus. You will next hear from us after Christmas. Until that time, enjoy the holiday season and good luck on all of your wagers. May the 3-point shooting variance ever be in your favor. And that's all we have. Take care.